Hello, everybody. Welcome to 3 Point Perspective, the podcast about illustration, how to do it, how to make a living at it, and how to make an impact in the world with your art. I'm Jake Parker.
I'm not Lee White, but I am Will Terry, and all three of us are professional illustrators. We've all published for all the major publishers in the business. We've together published somewhere around 75 children's books. We've all taught illustration at university art schools. And Lee's on assignment today.
Lee's on assignment,
We don't know what
and
he's assigned to be doing, but he's
I
doing it
think he's
well.
watercoloring or something. Have you seen the watercolors he's been doing,
Yeah,
posted online?
pretty cool.
They're awesome. But what we have Eric Castleman in the house, and Eric is special and near and dear to us because he is a working professional who got his start through SVSLearn. And he tells a little bit about that story here. But this, I don't know at this point if this is going to be a two-parter or a one-parter. All I know is we talked to him for almost 2 hours here, and he just has a lot to say because he's a guy who became a professional illustrator in his 30s
Mhm.
after already having a career being a
As a
welder and then a
welder. Yeah.
stay-at-home dad. So really fascinating stuff. What was one of your big takeaways from this, Will?
Um, I'm unprepared for that because we talked about so many things.
Yeah.
Probably, I would say, um, and this is part of this is, in me talking to him privately as well, but how he is rolling with adapting to changes in our industry. We
Mm-hmm.
do get into that about talking about AI generated art
Mm-hmm.
and finding out that he was so worried and like it's all over, AI is going to kill us all, and
Yeah.
then how he's thriving right now. So that's probably my biggest takeaway.
Yeah. And I love that he brought his dad into the picture as an inspiration because his
Mm,
dad had a very you know, uh, an unexpected sort of career as a pro golfer, and how that right there was sort of fraught with all kinds of ups and downs,
yeah.
and what you could do with that, and what he sort of was able to gain from that and learn from that. So really good stuff. It's ericcastleman.com is his website. You're going to want to check out that. And you can also find him on his Instagram account, Eric J. Castleman. And it's spelled like you would expect, castle, like the building that kings lived in. And
Man.
you want to storm the castle. That's Eric Castleman. So with that, let's get right into it. What would be the meatiest question to ask you first? Like,
The meatiest question to ask me?
yeah.
Uh, yeah, I mean, yeah, how did you I mean, I guess the way I would put it for myself is, I started late, like 34, so it's like, how did I end up doing this at 34 and then getting an agent and becoming a professional illustrator, I guess. That's
Let,
kinda how I see it, yeah.
let's hear it. Tell us.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was a good, the good drawer in class or whatever, but it was just average. My brother was the good artist, he was
Hmm.
the really good artist. And then he was 7 years older than me, and he got a fine arts degree from Long Beach State. And so I was looking to go actually I would have been in the same school as Lee White at the same time if I would have went. Yeah, because I was
Oh,
looking at
wow.
Art Institute at the same time.
No
Yeah.
way. Okay.
And then, yeah, my brother, he's like a fine artist, and he's just like, there's like, the cigarette with the stem on it.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, it's all trash.
And the beret, he definitely has a
Yeah,
beret,
yeah,
doesn't he?
yeah. He's like, he just said they're just gonna make you paint like everyone else. And so I was like, all
What kind
right.
of
So I
car
became
did
a
he drive?
welder.
What
What?
kind of car did he drive?
My brother?
Yeah.
Oh man, at that time he drove like a Mazda 323, I think it was called,
Okay. I was
something like that.
expecting
It
a
wasn't a very
Saab
good car.
or a Volkswagen or something like that. Anyway.
No,
Definitely,
no,
yeah, definitely a Volkswagen driver
no. I
right there.
remember that car because he got pulled over and the cop. My brother's like, "What was I doing wrong?" And the cop tried to find a reason, and my brother was like, "He pulled me over because it just looked bad." And it was just had like a dent in the side. But no, I was gonna go there, but yeah, my brother's always kind of been my like the guy, right?
Mhm.
And then so I opted not to go, and I got married real young, and it just so happens my wife is a painter. So I was like, okay, painter, you know. And she's the one that I was probably 21. She bought me a bunch of books on how to get into picture book publishing, because that's always
Mhm.
what I've wanted to do. And you know how that goes. Someone gets you a book and it's like how to fly a plane or something,
Yeah.
and you're like, cool, you put it in the thing.
Right.
But no, I became responsible and was like a welder for a while.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and then we ended up having a kid, and my kid had special needs,
Mhm.
and then my wife was making more money than me at the time, and so I
What was she doing? She as a painter,
sh-
she was, or
no, she was just working a normal job, but she was
okay.
making more, and so I took the time off
Mhm.
to be with him, because you can't get daycare or anything like that. And it
Right.
ends up, all this time goes, and I'm 34, and I'm like, I remember this. I was just like really down and out at it, and it really drove me crazy, because almost everything I did, if I was trying to be a welder or whatever, everybody said, "Oh, you should have been an artist," because they see me drawing or something. And I'm like, ugh, because when before you do this, everyone tells you not to be one, and then you do
Right.
the responsible thing, and then all the guys are all, "Man, you really should have done that." And I'm like,
That's fun.
all
Yeah.
right, whatever. So it was like I was 34. It was like 2 in the morning, and I was just not having a good, like, I was not doing good. And so I went on YouTube, and I'm like, how to become a picture book illustrator, and Will's video came up.
There it
And so I
is.
was like, yeah. So I was like, okay. And the funny thing about that is when I was 18, me and my brother um, dumbly got into a pyramid scheme, right? And so I learned a really good lesson at 18, is like, don't just trust anyone, right? So
Yeah.
when I saw Will's video, I was like, yeah, let's see, like, let's
Yeah.
see what the trick is here. And you guys were just so happening to go to CTNX that year, you two and Lee.
Mhm.
And so I was like, I'm gonna go see these guys and see if they're like, shysters or anything like that. So yeah, I got to meet you guys there. and I was all, okay, yeah, they seem pretty cool. And then I signed up, and it was I went from, I mean, if you could see my work, I remember it was January of whatever year, 2015 or something.
Yeah. I
I
think
mean,
that's what it was.
I could barely draw anything. I mean,
Yeah.
I could draw like good for a high school student, but I couldn't draw like, paint or
Right.
whatever. But I mean,
I have to
I
tell,
really like listened.
I got to break in right here, Eric. Because
Yeah.
when you were doing Third Thursday, you remember that?
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
The competitions? The three of us would
Explain
look at,
Third Thursday really quick.
yeah. So Third Thursday was the predecessor to How to Fix Your Art, which is an art competition that we run at svslearn.com, where anyone can participate in and take the art prompt, the art challenge,
Mhm.
do it in that month, turn it in, and then we look at it. And we still do that with How to Fix Your Art right now.
Yeah.
But so Eric was turning his in, and it was a unique drawing style like we had never seen before. But we were like, and it was funny because Lee was like, gosh, he has to render every blade of grass. and
Yeah,
and
it's
and
funny.
and I
You
was like,
actually told me that.
and I'm like, I kept telling Jake and Lee, I'm like, that was what all of my early work looked like, all of it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I was rendering and I would sit there and say to myself, like, I don't know how to do this any other way other than to render every blade of grass. So I got what you were doing right away.
Oh yeah. No, I don't know if you remember, but you messaged me out of the blue, and you said, "Hey, I wanted to give you a call," and I was like, "Oh, I think it's about to be a 4-point perspective, or something." I thought I was going to be like, and so we spoke, and you said, "Hey," and you gave me this. You talked to me about critique groups or critiques, and then you told me about the Elaine and Seinfeld thing, right? About the bird flying in her head
Uh-huh.
thing.
Mhm.
And so I was like, wait, what's he about to get at? And so you're like, I'm going to give you a critique. And I was like, go ahead. I have a critique group. I can handle anything. And you told me that. And I was like, right, cool. And it took me a year to get my head like out of the, because it was like the moment you told me that, I looked at my portfolio. I'm like, it's all trash. I couldn't unsee it.
Right.
I'm like, well, Terry, yo, you found it. Okay.
I mean, you know, Okay, so one of my professors would tell this story, and he'd tell it all the time till we all got sick of it. But he would tell this story about how um, he rendered when he was in college, he rendered this portrait, and he did a portrait in a hand because a lot of times they'll
Mm,
like want you to do the hand, like gesturing somehow,
right.
and he had really good reference on the hand, really good reference, right? That he put in this thing.
Hmm.
Hmm.
So he had like every wrinkle, every hair, every
Oh yeah.
every piece of anatomy, veins and stuff. And his professor at the time was like, "Gosh, like it's supposed to be a portrait, and we're supposed to get to know the person through this. We're supposed to. This is about the person, not about the anatomy of the hand." And
Right.
that's what we do, right? As artists, is we learn that we can do something, and so then we go, well, let's do it. Let's just, and we lose focus of the big picture.
Right.
And
Right.
yeah, so that's what I was trying to help you with, and because I was
Yeah.
there, we all go through that stage. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. No, and it's like, so I remember I went to my critique group with that. I was like, I just got, a critique from Will. I'm like, how do I handle this? And it was like, I went to my brother. I was like, how do I do it? And he was like, stop getting so close to the canvas or the screen. He was giving me all these things, right? And it took me about a year to really like, if you like, look at, I mean, the stuff I have on my website that's at the bottom, that's really like earlier. As you move up, you start to see that I'm a little more like, you could see some of this stuff's a little more loose in the background.
Hmm.
But one of the things I really realized is like finally drawing something, to me at least, is a lot easier than taking a couple brush strokes and making something look like a castle
Hmm.
or something like that. And I'm like, oh man, Marco Bucci. I watched a lot of his stuff on it
Mm,
after that because he's really good at just real, general
so good.
brush strokes. But I
Hmm.
found him at your guys's. I took his class at your guys's place, the
Yeah.
Hmm.
SVS. Yeah, so no, I mean, so I remember like, so I started in January, and at the same time you guys have YouTube channels, so you also have a lot of advice on I remember Will also talking about like the most talented student in his class would tend to not be successful, and it was the ones who felt like they were left behind or something.
Hmm.
And
Mhm.
that kind of like I've heard a lot of that, like Harold Bloom, the great literary critic, he was asked like, what's the key thing that he can say about all the great writers that they had, and he says that it was the people who felt like their moment had passed,
Mm,
and that they worked so hard because they felt like they already missed the moment, right?
mhm.
Hmm.
And so that really rung true when you said that. So I went into SVS with the mindset of I'm a beginner, I know nothing, um, treat everything like I need to learn it, And so it was pretty good. I mean, when I painted every single day for, I still do, but I had an agent not even a year later. I couldn't believe
Wow.
how quick it happened. Yeah. I mean, I had a portfolio by July. So I started in January. In July, I had 15 pieces. In September, I was on Kidlit 4-on-1, and then I had agents messaging me. So
Wow.
it was, and then before that year was up, I had my agent that I still have today.
Hmm.
So I mean, it really definitely worked out for me, So
Yeah. So
um,
timeline wise, from welding
yeah,
so it went welding to stay home dad
yeah,
to going to CTN
yeah.
to so how many years apart was going to CTN, checking us out to landing work, essentially getting work.
Yeah. So it was November of, I think. So in November, I think you guys were at CTNX that year,
Right.
and then January I sign up officially, and
Hmm.
then the following November I have an agent, and I have a job. I did Highlights magazine. That was my first job,
So
which was
in that year where you're like, tell us about that. Like, are you grinding every day? Like, I just got to get work done, got to get pieces made, got to get illustrations done. How did that like pan out?
yeah. So I made a goal list that I wrote out the first of the year where it was like a ladder, but the ladder was very easy in the beginning. So I remember it was like draw for an hour, for a week every day.
Mhm.
And so I did that, and then I made it the next week, finished an illustration this week,
Mhm.
and then after that, after I did a month of these kind of weird things, then it became every week I should have an illustration done, and I should post it on social media, no matter how bad it is. My brother gave me the advice. He said, because I said, "Oh, I don't want to share my art. It's embarrassing. I don't really think I'm very good at it." And he's like, "You'll never think you're good at it." So I was like, okay. So I started posting it. And then I just kept having these little goals that kind of, got tougher or whatever. And my end goal was that I should have 15 illustrations by July so that I could go to the SCBWI conference in LA. And I lived in LA at the time.
Mhm.
So that was my goal, but my daily schedule, pretty much when I was my normal thing was that I would work, I would draw every day. Yeah. So I drew so much in that time, and was working and taking your classes so much at the time that I think a year after that you were on the forums, Jake, and I just posted my schedule and you told me to take a break. You're like, dude, like chill. And so I've had to like schedule in taking breaks.
Okay. Yeah.
Even now, it's like I go fishing all the time, but I'll have to like tell myself you should, because I have this fear. I was raised by a golfer, so
Mhm.
my dad was a pro golfer. So you have to understand like the way you learn golf is like, if you eat bad sushi or something, your swing's never gonna be the same. That kind of stuff. And so I have it drilled in my head that if you take a day off, you're all of a sudden going to be making anime or something like, so,
That's
so,
hilarious.
so I have to like keep telling myself that it's okay to step away. But
Mhm.
that was really how I did it. I tried not to be unhealthy about it, but I did put on some weight.
Mm. Okay.
I've never done that.
Yeah.
Sa
Yeah.
Sacrifice
Yeah.
some things for the
Yeah.
for the craft.
Yeah. Well, I took a lot of that to heart, the 10,000 hours. I remember doing the math and saying, well, I can speed this up, you know?
Right.
And and then I realized, yeah, no, I need to exercise more. But the other
What
thing
what are
was
you
is
what are you doing for exercise?
oh, nothing. But I
Oh,
am going like fishing. I do have my mountain bike. Right now, my doctor actually was like, he put me on this diet. And I thought I was just stressed out because of all the work I was doing,
Mhm.
because I've been doing a lot. So, I think I put 5 books out last year, and it was
Holy
like,
wow.
cow.
yeah. And one of them
Whoa.
was, yeah, one of them was, 180 illustrations, and the publisher didn't really. They said 40, and I was picking it up for an illustrator that dropped the job, and so I was like, yeah, I'll do 40 black and white illustrations. And I got on there and I was like, oh no, he really didn't do them, and I had
Ugh.
to do 180 in like 2 months.
Gee
Oh my
whiz.
gosh.
What book
Oh
was that?
yeah, no, huh? It was the prairie dog one.
Mm.
Yeah. And so I remember Will talking about you doing a book in like a month,
Yep.
and I was just like,
In a
it's
hotel
funny. A
room,
lot
a
of the
lot of
things
it.
you guys say, you have to just experience it,
Yeah.
you know.
Right.
And so it's kind of
I
like the
had that in that month. I had my bathroom break scheduled out. I had a walk. I allowed my indulgence each day was a walk
oh yeah,
Dang.
for like 30 minutes. And
yeah,
then it was 6 in the morning until
Mhm.
midnight.
Mhm.
And because to get it done,
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No,
It's the
I
only
mean I
way.
do days like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're in that year where you're practicing, had you gone digital or were you still working traditional?
So yeah, so I was working traditional. I had an iPad because I was doing, like I said, I was at home with my son, and my dad he's a pro golfer, so he bought me an iPad because he wanted me to start doing photo editing for his students.
Mhm.
So he would like film the swing, and then I would take it and break it down into these photos where it showed sequences. And so I had this iPad, and I was buying when I started you guys' school. I thought I was going to be more of a watercolor painter. Um, so I was looking at a lot of Lee. I was watching Lee how he does it, and I ended up spending like $20 a piece of paper. And I'm
Mhm.
just like blowing the paper. And at this time, my wife's the only one working, and I'm just thinking, my wife's looking at me like, okay, you better get good at this soon. Because I'm like, and so it was just like one day I was just like, I picked up my iPad. I'm like, I guess I'll just do this. And that was the best decision because it was like I didn't have to keep buying paper and stuff like that. But I've been digital ever since. And
Hmm.
I try to use it so that it's one-to-one trade-off between both of them. Like I don't even use like circle tools on there.
Hmm.
I don't know if it's because that's like a rule or if I'm just super lazy. I don't know.
Oh, right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
Well, you want it to look hand done,
yeah,
as hand
yeah,
done as
Yeah.
possible using digital
yeah,
tools.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, so it's been like, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. My schedule and how I got like getting digital was great, but
Hmm.
Is that a
there's also
Cintiq
things about
monitor
it.
behind you?
Yeah, that's my Cintiq. I put it on like an aerospace arm, so it's
Hmm.
like, so I
Oh,
can
nice.
move less,
Right.
even
Yeah.
less. Make sure I get even less workout, No, but
So
but
even after that year though of
Mhm.
of grinding,
Yeah,
what did you have at the end of it? Like obviously you caught the eye of agents. What did
yeah.
you have that caught their eye?
So what I heard um, from I got messaged by one agent who was really trying to get me to write a book, and
Hmm.
I didn't really get agents. I kind of learned by falling down, and I can read something over and over. It's until I go through the misery of something till I
Right.
really get it. But yeah, she was talking to me about she wanted me to write a full book. And I said, well, okay, well, why don't you just sign me and then I'll write a book? Because I was just feeling like, well, if I have to prove myself to you, what's the point of even like, why should you be my agent? I should send it out to many of them.
Hmm.
And I just didn't really get what an agent was at the time. And, I actually forget the question, but I think, what was it? It was,
What
what
would
did
you
I,
have that caught their eye?
oh, that's right. Yeah, so then I actually did end up looking at other agents, and the thing that they all kind of said about me was that every picture they saw of mine looked like a book, like a story to it.
Got you.
Mm.
Yeah, so um and I found that to be like I run a booth downtown in downtown Helena, Montana,
Hmm.
and it's I know that about my work because I do try to like leave a lot of I try to put two things together and have a narrative, but I like it to be where people kind of like Sean Tan. I really like how he
Hmm.
does things. And it's having that booth has been great because I have people come up and buy things and they tell you why they're buying it. And I'm like, that's a better story than I ever thought of with that picture.
Right.
So I really do see what they're talking about because before when they say that I know what I was creating. And so when someone comes up to me or even my agent today, like I made this one with this pumpkins and this crow, I tried to make it look kind of creepy.
Hmm.
My agent sees it as this sweet, cute, like, oh yeah, well, I wonder who lives in the pumpkin, and I'm like, the crows are gonna eat her. That's how I
Right.
see it. And my agent is a lot different. She's just like, oh, it's so sweet, and I'm like, I'm still trying to get to myself into that like puppy voice of picture
Hmm.
books, where you're like, oh, goody goody, you a little bit, like how I mean, like writing a picture book.
You mean
So
like for the younger audience?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because my work, I mean, the way I've always thought, I've always been really random. I'm a random person.
Hmm.
Like my critique group, we have a lot of conversations about all this kind of stuff. And yeah, I mean, I think that's been the hardest thing for me is really understanding that voice for picture books. Um, but that's more of a writing thing than a illustrating.
Well, are you working on the kind of books that you want to do? Like, are you getting offered the kinds of assignments that you would do on your own if you were writing the stories, or
I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, it's like the things that I would like to do are so weird. Like when I think of like Chris Van Allsburg or Sean Tan,
Hmm.
uh, I look at it and I get kind of bent out of shape sometimes where I'm like, why is it so easy? If you listen to Chris Van Allsburg do his talk about his career, it just sounds like I drew this and then this happened and then I went there and and then,
Right.
and you're just like, oh, that was back in the day when everybody had 25 cents for a BMW or something. That's the way you kind of interpret it. But
Right.
then I just watched a PBS thing with him where he did a very thorough.
Mm,
walkthrough of his career all the way through every year of college. And you
mhm.
realize, oh, this didn't happen that easy for him. Like he really, he actually went to a publisher, saw his work, or his wife took his art to a publisher, and they're like, oh yeah, we really like it. And then they sent him a manuscript, and it was about a bunny's first day of school. And he's like, oh, I can't do this kind of stuff. Like that's not what I want to do. And then the publisher just told him, you got to write if you want to do what you're drawing, you got to write it. Like, we're not going to give you a manuscript that makes sense to you like that,
Right.
And then the same thing with Sean Tan. When I listen to his stuff, it really had to be that way. And it's
Mhm.
something that I've really had to learn, because when I got an agent, I thought it would be like, like Tim Burton. I'm like, oh, I'm the weird guy, and you guys will just give me stuff and I'll weird it up. And that doesn't happen. You really have to, if you're going to be a weirdo, like an outlier, you're going to have to really craft that kind of narrative. You're going to have to start combing your hair weird, and it's your own
Right.
choice, right?
Yeah.
So that's something I've learned. And but the work I'm getting right now, a lot of the work I'm doing right now has been that I have kind of a dual thinking process with this. Is it's kind of like being in a band. If you're in a band, it's not like you're gonna only practice with your band. You might be in like a metal band here, but on the weekends you're in a jazz band.
Mhm.
And so I look at it like the stuff I do that's maybe even more local, I really use it to learn how to build a book. So the way I looked at it like is, well, I'd like to really understand how to format and do all this stuff. I might as well get paid to do it. So
Mhm.
that's the way I look at
Mhm.
it, right? And I'll take on smaller jobs where they give me more hands-on, and so I'm kind of seeing things that way, I guess.
That's a
But
great attitude.
yeah, yeah, and then, but I took the whole summer off to finish a book for my agent. She's been waiting for a while, so it's kind of sad. That's the sad part, is when you have to put your agent and then also what you want, like how your
Mhm.
vision
Mhm.
for the summer and everyone else. So
Right.
it could be a little weird, you know.
Right.
Speaking of that, I think that so many illustrators, and it's usually from the more established illustrators, are putting pressure on the younger ones to, make sure you're getting paid enough, make sure the contract favors you, make sure that everything is good on money, make sure you're not getting taken advantage of, right? Quote.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
And but what you're saying is you're looking at it as, I'm getting paid to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I looked at it too. Is like, I'll take on a job, get paid less
Mm-hmm.
than what I think it might be worth.
Right.
But look at all that I'm going to get, that I'm going to be able to use later on.
Right.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know?
I mean, there's more to a job than just the money. Uh,
Yeah.
although there are no endless amount of people willing to take advantage of artists. That's
Right.
for sure.
Right.
Right. Like you're more likely to pay your plumber than you are the artist that you
Yeah.
hired to design a logo or something
Yeah.
like that, right?
Right.
At least that's been in my experience, right? But I have gotten a lot of mileage out of taking jobs that maybe were a little bit less paid than I wanted to, or free,
Right.
helping out somebody,
Mm-hmm.
then and learn from them and added a portfolio piece, than just saying no to everything because it wasn't, the exact amount of money that I felt like I was
Mhm.
worth.
Right, right. Well, and I think we talk about it in our critique group, my critique group a lot, where well, we won't talk about specific numbers, but you do realize, like, because I don't know how, I think we have like 6 or 7 people in our group, and it's people come into it with an idea. I
Hmm.
mean, you just think like when you looked at when you're younger and you look at like Quentin Blake or something, and it just, you have a perception of how it works. You think they live in a hut, and you
Hmm.
think that they draw and send it by like bird, and then they
Yeah.
get like big money in a bag or something. And it's just been, I think it kind of rang home when I saw Dan Santat's Caldecott speech,
Hmm.
Mhm.
and he's like crying about how how he was like scraping by, and he's like, I did 11 books, in one year. And
Yeah.
I'm like, oh no, this is gonna be tough. you He's crying,
Yeah.
but no, it's not that it's just everybody's situation's so different. We don't
Right.
know if Dan Santa was, how much what his bills are. You don't know, and
Hmm.
the more I have gotten into the situation I'm in where I'm able to, like we moved to Montana
Hmm.
and we were able to bring down our cost of living quite a bit. So my threshold for what I needed to make was better, at that point. So um, it was easier for me to make choices of that, and I think a lot of people, I mean, Lee was pretty good at this. He moves all the time. So like, and I remember, a tree fell on his like, a big tree fell in his backyard at one point, and then
Yeah.
he has this majestical house at one, and I'm like, man, I would love to live in the house, and he sells it and moves, and he did a class on finances, I think, for you guys, and
Right.
Uh-huh.
and he talked about just uprooting if you're on the coasts maybe and moving. So I
Hmm.
always had that on the back of my head that maybe I should probably get out of this high, rent and stuff like that. And when I was in California, we took a job. I was an on-site property manager.
Hmm.
Mhm.
So I took that job. We took that job specifically so I can be an artist. And a lot of actors in Hollywood do that. Used to do that. Those jobs are disappearing, but they used to take those jobs where you're like a property manager and you
Yeah.
can leave at any time. So that was kind of a trick, I learned from the actor people I knew.
Wait.
Mhm.
So what, as a property manager, essentially, what are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, it was just you're basically living there like everyone else, but you get yelled at. That's the only difference,
Hmm.
And it was yeah, we had 48 units there. I
Hmm.
was there through COVID, and we actually we left during COVID to come up here, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Eric's
it
got
was
some good stories
How are
on
those
that,
so
by
jobs
the way.
drying up though?
they are.
Who's replacing them?
Well, they're changing the laws. It used to be that you had to be on the property if it was so many units.
Oh,
But
right.
now you're getting off-site property management. It's funny because when I was we were doing that. My wife worked it for a competitor at the same time that did the opposite thing, where she they managed it from a distance.
Hmm.
And so they're just getting rid of those things. I think a lot of, especially when you don't hear about these news articles until you start doing it, but you always, when I started doing it, it was like, on-site property manager assaulted, and I'm like, oh no,
Yeah.
um, and I was just like drawing on my Cintiq, and like someone will knock on the door and they open up, to talk to the property manager, and they see a big, like turtle I'm drawing, and they're like,
Yeah.
they're trying to pay the rent. And I'm like, yeah, I'm just sitting here drawing, and I don't, but it was a
Right.
good job for us, to to do. It was a good job for me, and my wife's always been really cool. She's always been like, yeah, we'll figure it out. We'll do this, and even now, this whole like how I was gonna do this interview, I was gonna have my camera pointing down at me.
Yeah.
She's helped me set it up. I'm a total like idiot when it comes to
It's like,
like
it's really eye
everything.
level. That's
Yeah, 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 yeah. She put this fake beard on me. She said you should look more like a man.
that is a majestic beard, by the way.
Yeah, yeah, for your little baby face. Yeah, no, no, but yeah, no, that was a good job for that, but you don't need to do those kinds of things. Obviously, there's people every like our in the group I'm in, like we have a doctors in there. Like
Hmm.
one's a full time doctor. We have one's a school teacher. Other one works for I think he's an art director for a game company.
Hmm.
I mean, we have all these, and then there's me. It's like whatever.
Who organized your group?
So I'm sorry.
Who organized your group?
Okay, so Simona Ceccarelli,
Hmm.
she went to SVS.
Yeah.
She's the driving force. I mean, she's just a go getter. So when
Hmm.
she,
Yeah,
I'm
she's
sure,
great.
yeah, yeah, yeah. We actually planned to make a website together, not as a competitor. I think I brought it to Will, where it was just a forum where, and the rule was you had to have an agent to get in. It was kind of gatekeepy. But our feeling was is that the reason we formed was because once we had agents, it was hard to talk about things publicly, about what you're doing, because you get
Yeah.
like
Mhm.
1,000 people saying, you should put more, like I don't know, Yu-Gi-Oh in it. I mean, it's kind of hard to like understand,
Right.
like.
Right.
So we needed like very like specific things. So we started doing that. We were going to create a small little forum that was really more personal, people we knew.
Yeah.
It wasn't going to be like, oh, everybody come up, sign up. But we ended up just forming a critique group, and Simona, she's I mean, she like a robot. I don't know like how to explain it. She just takes information. She I mean, there's a she used to be a biologist. So she had some assistants, or virtual assistants, and she would go and pay them or whatever, and they do like breakdowns of all social media platforms, and she saw all statistics. She broke them down by like illustrators that are on there. There are also teachers or have an income that's outside of illustration. They find out where they're getting the most work, and she broke it down this huge grid. And that's how she thinks, you know.
Yeah.
She attacks everything like this, and you can't really compete with that when you're like me, who's like, you know, I'm like, I look crazy, you know, and I'm like, you know what I mean? Like, like
Yeah.
she's talking about all the smart stuff, you know, and I'm like picking my ears. But she's good to have.
Yeah,
But
I
yes,
Doesn't
interviewed
show.
her. I interviewed her on my YouTube channel,
yeah.
and I'm sitting here the whole time going, I should be
She should-
I should be like taking notes on everything
Yeah.
she's saying.
Oh yeah,
You
yeah, yeah.
know, it comes from coming from a science background. But can you as you're talking about the critique group,
Yeah.
because I think that's a huge thing that you got involved in and that you
Mhm.
guys organize. Can you tell people what is a critique group and why it's important, and like give us like if someone's coming to the podcast and this is the first time they've ever heard a critique group,
Oh
what
yeah,
is
yeah,
it,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah, I guess it's kind of hard for, I guess that makes sense because when you're first starting out, you don't think like I need people to tell me what I'm doing wrong all the time, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, a critique group is basically to help you kind of see the problems you're not seeing. And it also helps you build a relationship with other artists to like, we deal with more than just art. We deal with the business side of things, how to deal with agents. We share that information with each other. So we're kind of creating a little clique where we have kind of inside information on trends as well. You know, I'm sure you guys do that too, where you guys are like, I heard, you know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But mainly the critique group's valuable in the sense of being able to have a bunch of eyes on your work. Um, Whereas when you're dealing with non-professionals, you're gonna get, it's like your mom, you know, showing your mom or your friend your art. They're gonna be like, I like it. You know, they'll like
Mhm.
anything just to, you know, so they can eat the ice cream at your house.
Right.
So it's like, you know what I mean?
Right.
So you need, you know, like for me, I have an Italian biologist in there who's very straightforward. I mean, we get in the arguments like, oh my goodness. When we bring someone new in, that's the first thing we tell them. Me, Eric, and Simona are gonna argue. And it only took about 15 minutes when we got Braden Howell in
Yeah.
there.
Uh-huh.
It took about 15 minutes for me and Simona to get in a big argument over Sean Tan. And so if I ever mention Sean Tan, she goes, "You're not Sean Tan, okay?" And I'm like, "I don't want to be Sean Tan." Oh yeah, it's hilarious, right?
What
And
what is there
Braden's
to
in there.
argue about Shantan? Is it more like you being inspired by him and
Yeah.
how that's, you know, that's
Well,
dangerous territory sometimes?
yeah, it's more of like when I mentioned Sean Tan. So okay, so she thinks that I'm competitive with any guy. So
Mhm.
okay, we'll talk about the drama here. So it's like
We'll have
if
her
I
on to
mention,
tell her side at
yeah,
some
yeah.
Yeah.
point.
So as long as you don't share this, like Dan Santa. Okay, so no, so every time like Dan Santa it's like I said, when you hear a lot of the stories about how careers go, people aren't going to tell you all the bad stuff. They're just going to tell you
Right.
like, oh yeah, I do this.
Yeah.
But it makes it hard when you're breaking away from customer to, you know, a person that's going to be in the same field. It's not the same kind of information you need to like build a career. So I would always be like, it can't be this easy for him. It can't be, you know.
Mhm.
So Simona gave me the illustration of like a gorilla. She thinks like guys are like gorillas, where a gorilla will be walking by, and if a gorilla's on a slightly higher elevated thing, it'll just have to go push him off, you know, for no reason. It's just like, ugh, you know. And so
Oh, it's
now,
funny.
if I mention Dan Santa, she changes his name to a feminine to see if it doesn't trigger me anymore. And I'm like, I'm not triggered. I'm just saying, like, I'm like, how does he do it? You know. So
Yeah.
same with Sean Tan. If I mention Sean Tan, I'm like, oh well, Sean Tan does it like this. She's like, get Sean Tan in her head, you know, like because
Mhm.
he's such an outlier,
That
you
he
know.
is an
And
outlier. That's
yeah,
true.
like I'm sure he'll come on your podcast and
That'd
come
be
on
nice.
and
What are the other people in the group doing when you guys are going at it? How do
um
they respond?
Braden, I remember the first time Braden, he said, fight, fight, fight. And then if I think we have a saying like mom and dad are fighting or something like that. Like,
Yeah.
and it's funny because I did take a break from the group for a year
Hmm.
just because I was like, I don't need to hear them talking anymore for a bit. And,
Mm.
it's like the Jackson 5, you just like at some point, I'm going to be wearing a
Right.
glove.
Right.
So,
Right.
like, so but I ended up speaking with Simona the most. We realized like we argue, but it's because we're such opposites that it's like, so it works out. But
Hmm.
yeah, it's a weird thing. Critiques group. Yeah. What's a critique group? I don't know. At this point, it just feels like a family Thanksgiving dinner at this point. But you know what I mean?
Right.
But you
But
catch each other's. I mean, you obviously when you're actually looking at the work, you're catching stuff, and
yeah.
you're saying, um, you know, you're solving the problem this way, but have you considered this, or this might be a
Right.
problem, blah blah blah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And in our group we have Simona was, out to the races so quick from SVS, but she had a master's in fine arts too.
Hmm.
So she's a learn. She just likes to learn. She's constantly buying books on everything. So when she was, out of the gates and she was just getting work and getting work, and then Naomi followed suit with her, and then it was we had a couple other people, but at the time, but we have this kind of like hierarchy of people, how much work they've done. And so it's been really good to have people who are, I actually read this the other day, like having a group is good to have people in different places in their career, because the person who's like at the top, they can look back and remember where they were at. They kind of appreciate like
Hmm.
what they have, because it's so easy to be blinded by, you get used to the water, the temperature of the water a little
Right.
bit. And it's good to be able to look back and see me going, and sure gonna be
Right.
like, oh, at least I'm not him, so and then for me, it's good, to be where I'm at, because we're all, you realize that everyone's so different. I mean, I did I'll spill the beans a little bit. So I did a project not long ago, I decided to do a self-publish with someone,
Hmm.
and it just went horrible. I mean, it was like it fell apart, and I realized, why some people without a critique group, it's really hard to hear a critique. It's just really
Right.
hard to hear like this isn't working, and in my group, I hear it every day. I mean, it's like even if I'm not posting art, it's you're you stay up too late. Why are you up so late? It's like the constant. I mean, there's never a time that they're not in critique mode.
Hmm.
So I realize if you don't have that, it takes a while to learn how to take a critique.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a skill.
Oh yeah.
It's just I grew up in church. I thought I would just be good at it because I've always heard about my error, and things like
Right.
that. I didn't realize that it's different when you're doing something with your personal art, which is very off limits for a lot of people. It's kind of like a child, you know?
Yeah.
I blame public schools for that, by the way.
Mm. Yeah.
Because like your English paper comes back marked up. Your
Oh yeah.
math test comes back marked up. Your art doesn't come back marked up. It's like, oh, good job.
Yeah,
You did
Yeah.
yeah,
good. Yeah.
It should be
Art
marked up,
should have been
right?
marked up too.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then
Well,
there's so much self-worth wrapped up in stuff that you create too, a lot
yeah.
of times.
Yeah,
If
you
you don't
kind of
like my art, that means you don't like, and then my art is a piece of me, that means you don't like me.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, my sister used to get those like statues of dogs that you can paint.
Hmm.
You ever seen this? And it's just like I still have one, but if me and my brother, so it was me and my brother and my sister, we were the ones that were doing more art, so we would come in there like, yeah, whatever, like statue of a Sharpei, and she'd be like, "Arr!" and
Right.
the thing is like you kind of realize, yeah, you're doing something for fun, and you're doing something for the pleasure of it.
Hmm.
um, it's hard to, even though you know that you're going to professional, you're switching to a professional thing. It's hard to switch, click all the switches
Right.
up and down. That this is this. Like you have to look at this as a product. You have to look at this as like, because even when I'm painting, I have these moments where I'm just like, this is, this is sweet. This is my soul or whatever, and then I'm like
Yeah.
selling it at a booth. So you have to kind of make a distinction there. And the critique group helps with that. But my critique group, yeah, it's been good. I mean, yeah, we talk about too much stuff.
Hmm. How do you guys talk? Like, what
On
is
Facebook.
Facebook? It's a
Yeah.
Facebook group.
Yeah. So we have we have a private messenger.
Mm.
So it goes 24/7. So there's
Mhm.
never a
Oh,
moment that you go in there and there's not someone asking something
so
or
you
something like
guys
that.
are not? Do you meet ever on like Zoom?
No,
Oh,
no,
I
no,
envisioned that it would be like a live video streaming thing.
no. I think that the way we're all scheduled, so like, we have one person who's a full-time doctor, and then
Hmm.
she's on later at night, late at night, and then
Yeah.
Can
Simona's
I
in.
ask who that is?
It's Naomi
Oh, I
Landry.
didn't know that.
Yeah. So it's so funny.
Wow.
I have an eye condition that's so super rare, and she specialized in it. And we found out a year after. I said, "Oh man, I have iridocyclisis." She's like, "That's what I do. I deal with." And I'm like, "All
What?
right, here we go." But
Wow.
I try not to like get medical advice. I'm
Like,
not having her write me prescriptions or anything, but like, there's,
I have
I'm a
a
little bit, yeah, huh?
I have a podiatrist friend, and I had plantar fasciitis, and he's like, "Dude, just come over. I'll get you
Yeah,
inserts made for you. Just charge you whatever it costs
yeah.
me." And I was like, "Sweet."
Yeah. My dad's like that. He's in the golf business in Southern California, so he has a lot of doctors that are his
Hmm.
students. So like, he hates well, he's gonna watch this. He hates the doctor. So like, and
True.
but all the students are like, doctors. So they're like, they just like punch them in the back and fix it.
Yeah.
So he's always going and finding these kind of interesting things, and
Is your
yeah,
dad
that's kind of.
is your dad Greg Castleman?
Yeah, you found his crazy Instagram.
Yeah.
Yeah. I showed him how to start an Instagram, and he's what is he at 50,000 followers? It's
Yeah. I mean, golf's huge.
oh,
Like,
I know. It's weird now when you're like, it's my time to be on social media, and he's like, you call there, and he's like, you see my latest video, and I'm like, what are you doing, man?
he's doing reels. Well, I mean, people want to learn.
Yeah,
Honestly, I've been looking at like this through the lens of service for others,
yeah,
right? Like, when you're making art for yourself, you're the client, and that's
right.
all that matters really.
Hmm.
Are you impressed? And that's where, when you live in like, when you're creating art in like an amateur, and I don't mean amateur by the quality of work, but as sort of the focus, your intention is like, this is for me.
Right,
um, that's all that matters. But when you start shifting to, I want to make art, or I want to do something that is a service and it helps somebody accomplish something,
right,
then it turns into, uh, it turns into more of a business. It turns into more of a professional sort of thing. And so that's where it gets really murky for artists, where they're like, well, I want to get paid, but I'm also
oh
want
yeah,
to do it for myself.
Hmm.
yeah,
And how come nobody's going to pay me? Nobody's paying me for the stuff that I absolutely love.
right,
Um, but when you look at it through the lens of golfing, like, sure, your dad loves to golf,
right,
but at some point he sort of aged out of the sport.
yeah,
And what is he doing now? He's teaching people how to
yeah,
do it at a professional level, or at a level where they can like impress their friends, right?
yeah,
Hmm.
And so
yeah,
that's really more valuable in this sort of capitalistic, like,
yeah.
society that we live in. That is more valuable than just him going out and golfing for fun.
Yeah,
Hmm.
no, and it's funny. I mean, I've really modeled my career kind of off of him because he was a phenom of a player when he was younger,
Hmm.
and he got drafted into Vietnam though, and they stationed him in Germany, and he ended up winning the Heidelberg Open. They let him play the golf, and he wins the Heidelberg Open there.
Like Forrest Gump,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
golf.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And he was also, and that's so funny you say that. He was in the like preliminary ping pong Olympic team.
No way.
Yeah, I didn't know that until I Googled it one day. When you first like Google, I was
Yeah.
typing my dad's name, and I'm like, why is he on the ping pong registry? And so
Dad.
I looked it up, and he's like, yeah, he's like, yeah, played ping pong in Vietnam. Like,
Now, did he get
No,
shot in the did he get shot in the butt
yeah,
though?
yeah, and the buttocks, yeah.
In the butt.
Yeah. No, but I remember in golf's really weird. You have to have so much money in the bank to be able to play it. They won't
Mhm,
let you try out unless you have like $50,000 in the bank. So a
mhm.
lot of people don't know that about golf because they don't want you sleeping in your car when you get the
Right.
tour.
Yeah.
So when he ends up having kids and with my mom, like me, I'm one of them, and he has to kind of come down to earth, like what reality is.
Mhm,
And I remember we were living in a house. This sounds like a cartoon. We were living in a house that tilted. The windows were plastic. It
mhm.
was like it was the weirdest, most crazy time. And then I went and I took a water hose, and I thought I was doing him a favor by filling up our car with the water hose,
Oh, oh,
and
no.
we were super
The
broke.
the
I
gas
mean,
tank?
yeah, yeah, and I
Oh,
remember we were
no.
driving down the road, and I'm sitting in the back, like,
Yeah.
just waiting until he sees how much I don't know what I was thinking, and the car is boom, 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 grr, and my dad turned and looked right at me.
Uh-huh.
He knew I did something. I don't know how he knew that,
Yeah,
but I remember he was about my age. He was about, late 30s,
yeah.
and, I remember he got out of the car and he said, "God, I give up."
Oh.
And that's what he said. And
Jeez.
and then
Oh,
he
God.
was yeah. And I was like, I'm a kid. I'm like, "What's that mean?"
Yeah, yeah. But looking at it now,
Yeah,
at
he gives
his
Oh,
up. We're
age.
gonna go
man.
back home. Yeah. But the next day he went and hit golf balls to relieve stress.
Mhm.
And one of the guy that owned the course was like, "You used to be that like star when you were a kid, right?" And he's like, "Yeah. So why don't you just teach here?" And my
Hmm.
dad was like, "Nah, I don't want to be a teacher."
Mhm.
And he went home. My mom made him.
Yeah.
And it was just like, of course, he couldn't see, the tree, the forest, whatever, the
Mhm.
trees and
Yeah,
forest
yeah,
thing,
yeah, yeah.
but that smart saying. Yeah, so I've always and it was always hard growing up when he would say, "You have to have a realistic goals," and I'm like, and he's like getting golf balls. I'm like, I'm like, "You're the wrong one to tell me this." No, it
Did you guys
was.
ever talk about in hindsight, you ever talk about the gas tank incident?
Oh, it comes up here and there, yeah, for
Mhm.
sure. Yeah, we have moments there where it's yeah, where he'll just say, "You remember that time?" But he wouldn't have a career unless it was for me.
That's true.
So,
So
yeah.
there's some
Yeah,
healing
yeah,
that
yeah.
happened
No,
there.
no, it worked out so well for him, and I just look back on it, and it gave me a lot to think about when
Mhm,
I was at that age, and I was having the same moment of my life. I had my son who had a situation that was complicated,
mhm,
and I was just thinking like, I just kind of give up. What am I gonna do? And
mhm.
when you're a welder, even before our kid was born, we went through the 2008 recession, and
Mhm.
Mhm.
welders got ruined. I mean, it was like
Yeah.
it's kind of funny. That's why when people bring up like AI or something like that, I don't. It doesn't bother me because now if I look back on the 2008 thing, if I would have stuck with welding even through the crash or whatever,
Yeah,
I would have been fine. It's
yeah.
just that we remember those
You
things.
figure it out.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like I'm at a place in my life where I can't let things stop me. It's like
Right.
Mhm.
I'm gonna do this, and yeah, I don't know.
You're gonna work around it. The teaching thing too, like I love reading people's biographies.
Mm,
Um, Mostly I'll go on Wikipedia and just be like, I'll be
yeah,
listening to a musician or something or a composer or whatever it is, and I'll just
yeah,
read their Wikipedia entry because I just want to know like where'd they come from, how'd they get
yeah,
here,
yeah. I do the same.
and so often do I read like especially in music, a
Oh yeah,
part of everybody's career is they had to I shouldn't say they had to. They taught because it was something that they could leverage their skills to make
Mhm.
right,
money while they were
right.
trying to get their opus created,
Yeah,
while they were trying to get
Mhm.
their album out, while they're and and I
yeah,
I don't I don't throw any shade at that
yeah,
as a profession because it really, I mean, how is anybody going to learn to do anything if not people at a very high skill pass on their techniques and their ability,
Yeah.
how they do it to
yeah.
others.
Well, and it's interesting because I was a musician in high school. I was doing music,
Mhm.
and I got into the jazz group, and this kind of plays into like the arts part of public school. And I kept telling them I want to learn how to read music. And they just were like, you have to go figure that out, like.
Yeah.
But I would take guitar lessons at this music shop down, by my house, and all the guys, look like, they just been like life has like beaten them up, right?
Mhm.
and and you find out these guys are like legitimately great musicians,
Yeah.
and they really taught me how to be a good musician. And one of them went on to be actually real well known, and the other teacher I had was famous. He was a surf guitar player back in the
Mhm.
day, and I just remember being like, "There's something about learning." I think that's why I didn't jump at school so easily. And then when I came
Right.
across you guys, I'm like, I like finding unique kind of thinkers that are a little bit offshoot of maybe more of a formulaic kind of. I mean, because Lee says when he was even at the school, everybody got A's, right? Like it was just like
Right.
you get an A, you get an A. Um, yeah, I always wonder what would happen if I went to that to the art center. Me and Lee would be the best friends.
Right. Right. You guys
Yeah.
would be, dialed into each other.
Yeah,
Like,
I should do a picture book of another dimension of me and his friendship.
well, that
You'd
that's like
probably be
a
playing disc golf too.
right.
No, in my family, no,
That's
no. My
true.
dad,
They found
yeah,
out you
disc golf.
threw a frisbee.
No,
Like,
frisbee golf is the AI to golf.
Yeah, Lee would not be invited over to your dad's house.
No, 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 no.
oh, that's funny.
I have a cousin that plays that. I'll never. It's blasphemy. It's
The thing though, I was reading about. Do you know Nathan Barry? He's the creator of ConvertKit,
no. I never
which
heard
is
of
an
it.
email. It's an email service. It's the one I use for my newsletter.
Oh, okay.
But he did this really great article. I imagine he'll eventually write a book about it. But it's called The Ladders of Wealth, and
Mm,
essentially, you have to pick a ladder. And sometimes you can kind of be on two ladders at the same time, but you pick a certain ladder to climb and of wealth to climb, and really those ladders can only take you to a certain height, right?
mm, right.
And there's a progression, and so it's time for money is like the first ladder, and that's
Mm,
90% of people, that's their job, is like,
Yep.
I'm going to show up to work, I'm going to give you 8 hours today, and at the end of the month or every couple of weeks I'll get a check, and I'm just exchanging time for money. And then the next level is offering your own services, the thing that you're able to do as a business.
mm,
So maybe you're a freelancer and you start working per project, instead of I'm gonna charge $50 an hour. I'm gonna charge you $2,000 to illustrate this book cover, you
right.
But I
know
can do it in an hour.
that
Oh
I can
yeah.
do in an hour. And so
Oh
now
yeah.
your money is, or your time is like ripped away from, you know, unsewn to the money that you're getting. And then
Oh
the
yeah.
next ladder is, and really the highest you can go on that ladder, the first ladder, the highest you can go is however much money you can make an hour,
Right.
lawyers, right? Doctors,
Right.
uh, the highest you can go on offering your services as a sort of as a business is, now you sort of run an agency, so you've
Mm,
got five other people who kind of do this
right.
sort of thing that you do, and we're offering this service for you. And then the next ladder is productized
Right.
services. So um it's like I'm trying to figure out how you would apply it to art, because I think this is
Well,
where AI does kind of take over.
Mm,
selling your own books, right?
Well, that would be the fourth ladder, is
Okay.
actual products.
mm,
So productizing your services would be like, hire me on as like or hire my agency on as your art team, so you don't
mm,
have to work with an art department. You just hire us on $5,000 a month, and we will provide whatever illustrations you need for that 5,000, or we'll
Mm.
provide 20 illustrations,
that's
or
yeah.
whatever it is. And I'm not sure how many, that might be something like a studio would hire, or a ad agency or something like that.
Right.
But then the highest you can go there is like however much you can get away with charging per month for this product service that you offer.
Right.
And then the last ladder of wealth is selling products. And it seems like artists either go from time for money to selling products and kind of
Oh
skip
yeah.
those intermediate ones,
Yeah.
um, which I
Yeah.
think is where training other people how to do it kind of exists.
Yeah.
Um, but then
Yeah.
selling products is like, I'm making books, I'm selling them, or I'm making toys and I'm selling them, or
Right.
I'm manufacturing things. And the highest you can go on that rung, that's essentially the most wealthiest people on the planet right now are people who have mastered selling products.
Mm.
Oh
So,
yeah.
your
Yeah. I was
Jeff
gonna ask.
Bezos, your Mark Zuckerbergs, your Elon
Yeah.
Musks, right?
Right.
That's what their business is. They're not trading time for money. They're not offering
Right.
services. They are saying, you want to buy an electric car, you want
Right.
to buy a phone, you know,
Yeah.
come to
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's definitely for me. Like just like I said, getting dragged to the dirt. I just learned. I'm like, oh yeah, that's why I should have paid attention to when Lee said I should pay my taxes or whatever.
Right.
You know, like
Right.
I remember that.
So I guess
Yeah.
my question, like for you, is what's next? Like, what's the next
Oh
10
yeah.
years? Are you thinking that far ahead?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to me, it's so I've gone through a little weird thing where I've kind of gotten off of Instagram and things like
Hmm.
that, and really just I wanted to start doing YouTube, which is that's not my 10-year plan, but it's
Hmm.
just more of about kind of getting my personality out there more than it
Hmm.
is, and where it's like I just know that just like I said, looking back at my dad, um, I realized a lot of it was just reputation,
Hmm.
and for me, I had a guitar, like I said, I had a guitar teacher who became quite famous, and I he has the weirdest career trajectory you'll ever see, where he was a very shy person,
Hmm.
um, and one day his parents got KFC chicken, and he didn't know how to. He had too much stage fright to play,
Hmm.
so he took the KFC bucket and put it on his head,
Hmm.
and he called himself Buckethead,
Okay.
and he just exploded. I mean, he was in Guns N' Roses. I mean,
Yeah.
he does a bunch of stuff.
Always wearing a
And-
bucket, or did he eventually
yeah,
take the bucket
yeah.
off?
No, he wears it live. He wears a KFC bucket on his head. He's called Buckethead.
Is that kind of like the dead mouse guy?
Kind of like that. Buckethead's
Yeah.
he was been around longer than that guy.
Or Daft Punk?
Yeah, if you look
Mm.
up, and he's a huge inspiration to artists. There's artists out there. There's some artists that only paint him. I mean, he's such a weirdo, you know.
Hmm.
But I
Hmm.
remember he told me that I asked him, so why do you put a bucket on your head? Like, what does that mean? What does that mean? He said, well, and he's considered by a lot of people one of the greatest guitar players to ever live.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And he was considered that, and before he was like anything. But he said that his guitar teacher at the time knew he was good, and so he said, I want you to meet someone. And so he drove him out to LA, downtown LA, and before they went up the elevator or whatever, he told him, he said, the guy we're about to meet is the greatest guitar player in the world. And he said, okay, let's go. And they went up, and there's a guy in a wheelchair that he's never heard of. And
Hmm.
he's the same age as my guitar teacher at the time. And he was phenomenal. And he just told him, he said, I'm great, but no one will know. Because it's like I can't be in a band, all this kind of
Hmm.
stuff. He's the unknown,
Yeah.
And he kind of it clicked with him in his head that you can be great, but totally unheard,
Yep.
And it just hit him one day that it's like you can't just rely on being good. Like that's what the
Right.
guy, his teacher, was trying to teach him. Like you can't just be a shy person in the corner saying, I'm gonna keep noodling on this guitar
Right.
and something will happen. And he's like, it won't, because you have this other guy, he has this problem, he's a disability where he can't do the things you could probably do. And he said he needed to hear that. And it
Hmm.
was just like, oh yeah, so he can't give up this opportunity that he has,
Hmm.
And that's when he started really getting he's like, well, how do I get over the shyness? He's like, chicken bucket on the head, So it
Yeah.
was like, so it's, you kind of see that. And for me, my tenure thing is like really building relationships. And where I want to be is I really want to be writing my own picture books.
Hmm.
But that's such a common thing. I really would like to actually be someone that's like actually has an ability to help people. I mean, I've always it's in my nature from my dad to
Yeah.
be teaching and also doing this. So, but where I really want, that's really where I want to be, is it's been hard, with COVID and all that. It really distorted my path.
Hmm.
Mm.
With, I mean, my agent and everything, she sends out emails to all the clients updating us on everything, and especially during COVID, it was like, nothing's happening. There's no publishing
Yeah,
going on.
for real. I feel
Yeah,
like we're just barely coming out of that.
yeah, yeah. And in publishing, it's starting to, like, it's still kind of dealing, because they're a couple years behind.
Right.
I mean, I can't tell you how many people's books came out during COVID that it was so sad to see that they're like launch part. Oh yeah, was that you?
Yeah,
Was that pickle? Was that that was the Bonaparte one, right? Part
the
two.
second one. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
Yeah,
yeah.
and the numbers like the numbers are just horrible. It killed that series.
Oh yeah,
Um, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. We can't. Well, like you said, like, I remember you saying 9/11 changed everything too.
yep.
And it's just publishing so rooted in New York, and New York was on the headlines with COVID too. So it made sense that, like, things would happen. But the
The other
point
thing
is like,
too, just to
mhm,
put a little final button on the New York thing, like my agent has told me that the every single office has completely changed how they work
oh yeah,
Mhm.
because of COVID, where every office is sort of different. Some people are in there like some days, some people are in
right,
there every day, some people are not in their office at all. And she's
right,
like, trying to get a meeting with anybody has been like the most difficult thing, because you don't know when people are around or when they're not.
Right.
And
yeah,
But
scheduling a Zoom or whatever, it's wild.
let me add something to that. that that was COVID. But
Hmm.
again, you talk about 2008, 9, 10. I mean, I'm talking to the creative director of Penguin Random House,
oh
Hmm.
yeah,
and she's saying, I'm blanking on her name right now, and I feel really bad. But she's telling me, I asked her point blank because we were both presenting at an SCBWI
Yeah.
conference, and I'm like, "What's going on?" Because I mean, like,
you
the
like
housing
cover against
market, there
the
were for
wall.
sale signs all down the street. I'm like, "What's going on in New York at the publishing?" And
Yeah.
she goes, "Will, it's horrible. People
Mm,
that I've worked with for 20 years got pink slips, and I never even got
mm.
to say goodbye to them."
Oh
Dang.
wow,
So the takeaway for me, because and then that's a time when reading manuscripts, the vetting of manuscripts,
yeah,
got offloaded to agents.
oh
So
yeah,
they laid off all these editors, and then when they came back, a few years later, they were like, well, maybe we don't hire them back.
right,
Maybe we just rely on agents to do the sifting for us.
Hmm.
So the takeaway for me is things are always going to change.
yeah,
Nothing
Always.
will ever stay the same, and
yeah,
and you kind of have to get used to that and be ready to adapt at all
I
times,
mean,
right?
and there's in every one of these like disruptions, there's like opportunity as well.
Right.
right,
And now it's AI.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah. No, I mean, it's I mean, like, what's gone on with COVID. I think the hardest part about it has been, like, that physical postcards are
Hmm.
pretty much done. I mean, they might come back, but that no one's doing that. I'm talking to you, and
Yeah. Who are
then
you going to
people
mail them
were,
to if everyone's at home and you don't
yeah,
Right.
have
and
their
then people were
address?
using, yeah, well, and then people were using Twitter, and then Twitter became, a controversial place. So now they're not on there. So, or they're not using as much. Like, my agent only uses social media on Tuesdays, because I
Mm.
think how much social media has become so controversial everywhere.
Yeah.
It's
Mhm.
even it's just too much. And where things have, right now, I think there's a kind of a question that's lingering over a lot of people in my critique group, is how do you get your stuff in front of agents? So right now it seems like my group's using Bologna book fair.
Hmm.
I'm going out in 2025.
I was hoping you were going to say like they were just mailing like the
No, it's some,
baloney.
like, good. It's to Rome. No, yeah. Thousands and no, I think that's been a no. I think for me at least, it depends really where you live. For me, I moved from LA, which has a lot of people, a ton of things going on, to a small town in Montana, and you live somewhere here, like here. There's a tourist culture. There's publishers that are built around making stuff for tourists,
Yeah.
and there's so much more enthusiasm for a local artist than I was
Mhm.
in like Southern California. I couldn't
Yeah.
believe it, you know.
It
Um,
Local artists are a dime a dozen in Los Angeles.
yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, my SCWI group in LA was Cliff Cramp, who's the Star Wars. He does all the Star Wars movie posters now,
Mhm.
and
Mm.
and he was just inducted into like the Star Wars. Yeah, he was in my SCWI group down there, and there was I had people that were like 20-year, 30-year vets at Nickelodeon or Disney that
Yeah.
were storyboard guys,
Yeah.
um, and then you come up to Montana, and there's more writers here,
Mhm.
and but there's something that you kind of get from being around people who have this, like I said, that like in the beginning, like feeling like there's a hunger there that you
Right.
don't have maybe in like LA where they're driving a Porsche and working for Disney.
Right.
Where you come here and people have this drive of like show me, or like let me show you what I'm doing, and my career has really shifted moving here. It's been like I've been really embraced
Yeah.
by the community, and it's really made my work, I think, better.
That's interesting 'cause, a lot of times people are like, at least this was a pre-COVID question. Do I have to
Yeah,
move to Los Angeles? Do I have to move to
Right.
New
right.
York if I wanna be successful?
Yeah.
You gotta make good art is what you gotta
Yeah.
do, and you gotta put it out there if you wanna be
Right.
successful.
Yeah.
It's
No, my agent never asked me where I lived.
never,
She
yeah.
and the way I look, I mean, I don't look like I'm like,
You look
"Hey,
like ZZ
kids."
Top's cousin.
Yeah, exactly. I've had people walk up, knock on my car door window, and go, "Roll down," and they're like, "I like ZZ Top," and I'm like, "I don't have this beard for that." I actually started growing this during COVID because I worked at the apartments,
Yeah,
and once you get closed down, everyone's at home, and that's my job. So it's like,
yeah.
yeah, everyone's closed down, and then they're calling me like, "I need new carpets." So I stopped shaving
Mhm.
to make it look like I was having a very hard time.
That's
Oh,
So
I
when
thought
you're
it was
doing
I thought it was so you could collect easier, because you
yeah.
were
Yeah. Yeah, no, no. It was because I was walking around the property, I had to do things, and I
yeah.
just started letting the beard grow, and then I would see people stop and go, "Oh, no, he looks like he's about to snap." And so it worked, and then I just kept it, and it really does keep certain people away.
Is
You
your
don't
is
get
your,
people coming up and saying, "You need a credit card?" What?
is your wife from LA too?
Yeah, yeah, she's
So
from
how
LA.
often do you make it back there?
We've not been back.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We're
So
trying to
family
get us
comes
to
and
come back.
visits you instead of you visiting family.
Yeah, coming up to Montana has been easy because it's an easy sell. It's like, "You wanna come up and, like, go up to Glacier?" And,
Yeah.
they're trying to get us to come down for Christmas, but I'm like, it's so hard going back into that. I just,
Mhm.
I don't
There's
know.
something about the Rocky Mountain corridor there with it's like attracts creative people,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah,
from Utah to Colorado to Wyoming and Idaho and Montana. Like there's just
yeah.
something going on there.
Well, there's people, I mean, when I got here, you realize there's people here that make a full living doing the weirdest stuff. They moved here
Uh-huh.
and they're like, "I don't know what I'm gonna do." And there's this guy, he just makes birdhouses out of the wood from like barns, and
Yeah.
he just makes them, and they're like $400 a piece. And I was like, "Who would buy that?" And we bought one.
Well,
And
reclaimed wood
you
is
know,
huge, you know?
and I just realized, I'm like, I want that, because he gives you the history of like where all the wood came from. It came from this river and this barn. And then
Yeah.
there's a guy here that moved here from like Pennsylvania, and he's like, "I'm just gonna take pictures," and he did. And now he has a whole career selling pictures,
That's amazing.
photos, and it's just like, yeah, people here, something about artists finding like going out into nature. There's something about it,
Mhm.
and there's a rich history here of the guy that wrote The River Runs Through It. He's from here. Jim
Yeah.
Harrison, who wrote some other books. He was here. There's something about it. I think the
The
campfire
Vlog
setting.
brothers live in Montana too.
That's right. The Green. Yeah, he
Yeah.
lives in Missoula.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, there's something about being in nature and all that, and I don't know, but it's been good. I mean, like the guy that runs my fly shop, he's a journalist, and
Mhm.
so we talk about writing and stuff like that.
So
So
did we get sidetracked? So your
yeah, for
10-year
sure.
thing is you want to lean into YouTube, and I get that because
Oh yeah, yeah.
YouTube has the best, I think, search tool. And
Mm,
so if you're making searchable, you can make searchable content that's still valid
yeah.
5 years later, but
Right.
then you can also make um, uh, algorithmically pleasing
Mm,
content that's viral in a way,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So it makes sense for YouTube to be an option. And also
mhm.
in this AI world, I'm just like critiquing your decision here. In this
Right,
AI
right.
world where it's hard to like tell, what's authentic and what's made by a
Yeah.
math program,
Oh, yeah,
having a
yeah.
person in front of you talking, sharing their personality, sharing part of their life seems like much more interesting than something a computer spits out. Is that sort of your
Yeah.
thinking there?
Well, my thinking was is that when I started on Instagram, it was kind of like you get followers and friends and family would
Mhm.
follow you and say, "Oh, cool." After about a year, it becomes a little bit like, "Oh, I liked your painting, but you didn't like me like eating all the cheese whiz picture, like." And I'm like, I'm like, I'm like painting. It takes me like 3 days. I start getting this trade off where people
Mhm.
are like, "Oh, I will like your work, but you have to be liking my personal photos of whatever."
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm not here for like the relationship part. And it's not because I don't like it, I just don't have time. It's like
Right,
the last thing I want to do is look at screens after I've been working all day.
Right.
right,
And on YouTube, I notice when people get on it and they use it, they're not a content creator automatically. They just have it
right,
because they have a Gmail account,
Yeah.
and they don't look at it like, oh well, I'll subscribe to your channel as long as you're watching, my cooking
Right,
pictures,
right.
whatever. And I just, it's like it gets weird where I also, I don't know, it feels weird. I've had people. It's hard for me to be honest on Facebook about my life because you're trying to promote yourself, and I get people message me that are longtime friends. They say your life's so perfect, and I said, I said, well, I'm not going to tell you that I'm like doing bad. I'm like,
Right.
I'm
right.
trying to like, so there's some kind of disconnect that I have, and it makes me feel guilty posting things or like, oh, I just published this book. And I'm like, I'd rather be on YouTube because I've noticed that people don't have this, like, they don't see it like they see everything else.
Mhm.
Right.
And so
Gotcha.
that's a big thing. Yeah. Yeah. The main thing is for me, like for the 10-year thing is that it, I feel like the COVID really kind of put a hiccup in where I was going. And and I really I've been really wanting to establish my own writing, as that's been the thing. Writing is so difficult,
Mhm.
especially for visual dominant people. I
Yeah.
think visually first, and then
You're gonna have
words
to
after.
do
Yeah,
the same approach to writing that you did to art, where
Yeah, I
you're
know.
like, okay, every day, write for an hour,
Yeah, yeah,
you know, okay,
yeah.
every day finish an essay or a story
Right.
or something.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if critiquing writing. I've noticed that writers, when I meet them, no matter how long they've been doing it, that it's harder for them to get a critique because it's so. When you read something, it could just be like the person's comprehension. Whereas like a picture, anyone could see it, and they can say, "Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I get it."
It's
So
an unfair advantage that artists
yeah,
have, is that our work can be consumed in a minute,
right,
mhm,
in a flash.
yeah,
And
yeah,
writing, listening to music, watching a movie, film, dance, all these things, you have to like experience it for a period of
yeah,
time.
right.
And a painting, you can just be like, oh, look at those
Y-
colors.
Yeah, yeah. I read a lot. That's one of the things that at least I have that. That's one of the things. But I was like, the music metaphors keep coming back when I was in a band, when I was in high school. Someone said like to be a good writer. I think it was Donna Tartt. I think she won the Pulitzer. If that's what the Pulitzer is, what you win, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
She said it's not how many books you read; it's how many books you master. And she
Mm,
said, so if you like Hemingway, you should master his books, meaning like write out and find
that's
sections of his, you know what I mean?
that's cool.
And that made sense
mm,
to me because I was like, when I was on band, I didn't listen to, it's like when you say, oh, you guys listen to music? And you're like, I like all music. What they're really saying is you don't listen to music much.
Uh-huh.
Um, but if you're going to be a metal band or whatever, you listen, your whole band has to be a fan of like the same two bands, right?
right.
And
Right.
you kind of become that. And that's exactly what a good writer will do is they're basically looking at five books that they love and just breaking down line by line how they do it,
Yeah.
and then they kind of form their own voice.
Yeah.
And so that was
That's what I did with illustration. I mean,
Yeah.
I was embarrassed early on at how few influencers I had, because
What do you mean
I'd hear
influencers?
somebody give a talk, and yeah, I hear somebody give a talk, and they're like, "Oh, I like," yeah, they'd rattle off like 7 or 10 artists they were influenced, and
Oh
I'm
yeah.
like 2 or 3, and I'm like trying to dig deep, like for the
Yeah.
4th or the 5th one, you know?
Yeah.
Mm.
No, I remember you guys brought that up. You said that you should. You said something like, a lot of students you'll talk to, you'll say, "Who's your favorite illustrator?" And
Yeah.
they're like, they can't name one. And I remember
Yeah.
being like, "Oh yeah, I can name like the two famous ones, right, that I know." And then
Right.
that really set me on a path of becoming a fan of artists, where
Yeah.
it was like now it's like now I'm gonna Marco Bucci was one, but who's the other guy? You guys, the ones that showed me. He's the one that uses like models.
Gurney
Um,
Oh, is
or
it, is it,
Brazilian.
yeah, the Brazilian guy,
Yeah,
oh
now I'm drawing a blank.
yeah.
Um,
Man,
but yeah, he makes 3D models,
I'm like,
and does a combination of illustration and photography
yeah. I
on
have my
some of his
books right
books, not
there.
all. Some of them are pure
I don't know what you're
illustration.
talking about.
It's that guy.
I'll know it
Yeah, it's,
when you remember and you show me.
yeah. I just was
I'll
looking at his
find it.
stuff today.
Keep going, I'll find it.
Okay,
Okay.
okay. Yeah. So, but it's like being a sports fan.
Hmm.
It's like a lot of people say, "Oh, I don't like basketball," right? Well, it's like, well, do you know the players? Do you know their story, right?
Hmm.
And once you realize that sports fans, they see the soap opera. They see that, like, I hate LeBron James or I love this guy, and if you don't know the players, then it's just a ball and a jersey, right?
That, for
And
real,
so,
someone who's new to baseball, like
oh yeah,
I grew up, we do pickup baseball games in
right,
the neighborhood, and I played softball, church ball, and
yeah,
all that kind of stuff. And whatever, I knew how to hit a ball and kind of throw a ball or whatever, but I
right,
never got into sports because my dad wasn't into sports. So sports
right,
wasn't like in our home, right?
hmm,
And it was during COVID where I was like, I need something to get my mind off of work. Because if you're, here's a side thing, if you're a freelance illustrator, COVID just made your job harder because
mm.
now everybody is like leaning on you for like nobody who was freelancer got a break during COVID,
Oh
you
yeah,
know. Um, and I was jealous of all these people who had like corporate jobs, and they'd be like, "Yeah, I'm at home watching golf,"
right,
or I guess there wasn't any golf to watch, but you know, I'm at home, I'm taking up all these hobbies, and I'm like, I have more work than I can handle. Plus, my kids are all home, right?
right.
Plus, so anyways, so that led me to be like, I got to get into baseball,
Oh yeah,
and it was a bad timing because baseball was getting shut down because of COVID. So what I did was I watched the 16-part the 16-hour documentary on baseball that Ken Burns did, which
oh,
was
okay,
like the entire history of baseball.
right.
And that gave me like context as to
Oh yeah,
why, the Dodgers originated in Brooklyn and then they moved to Los Angeles, and
right,
these were all the key players, and this was the 80s scandals and the 90s
right,
things and all that stuff, so that when I did sit down to watch baseball for real,
right,
uh, when it came back and they changed the rules a little bit, I was like, okay, you know, learning about the players who came up from the lower ranks, who came up
right.
from through the farm system or whatever, and
Exactly.
who got traded to who and whatnot. And yeah, I'm just right there with you. It's
Y-
like you
Yeah.
you become a fan of the story more so
Right.
than the actual sport.
Yeah, yeah. I'm always looking to see who. There he is. Yeah, Paulie Bernatine. Of course, it's hard to always remember. He's a name I've mentioned so many times, and of course, I forget his name. But that I have that book. I had to order that from overseas.
Oh yeah.
He's so
Yeah,
good.
it's great. It's all like models. Yeah, I took a lot from him. But it's like the same with the sports analogy. It's like once I started really listing out artists and kind of getting to know them. So like John Klassen,
Hmm.
like he comes up and I'm like, who's this guy? Like
Hmm.
making these books that are so simple. It's driving me nuts.
Hmm.
I'm over rendering grass here,
Yeah.
and he's
You didn't draw any grass.
he's yeah, he's like making stamps. He's all square, triangle, circle,
Yeah.
Caldecott. I'm like, all right, that's where you start really wanting to lose it, right? But
That
you
should
you
be
get
the
to
the title of his memoir, Square, the Triangle, Square, Circle, Caldecott, the John Classen story.
I was actually gonna do okay, so that's funny. I was actually gonna do some for book covers, and this might be a good thing. It's kind of funny book covers. I wanted to do. You ever heard the movie Being John Malkovich?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I was gonna do Being John Klassen's hat, and it's just like his hat on his head because he always wears a hat.
Yeah.
And I was gonna post it, and I was actually thinking, I'm like, we should try. I was actually think I sent it to my agent. I was like, let's sell this.
Mhm.
And I'm like, and has nothing to do with the book, but
Right.
it's all about his hat,
Yeah, yeah.
No, but you kind of, but that idea comes up because I'm dwelling on these artists so much. It's like
Mhm.
I'm constantly thinking about, like, I mean, I know what books you guys are working on. I know, like, what he's always saying about
Yeah.
what he's doing. He's a
Right.
fine artist, and he's doing the cards, and he's I always keep track of everybody, and
Let me
it's just
go here
part of
real
it.
quick. So, do you think that that an artist today, well, an artist period, can create without looking at other artists' work?
No way, yeah, no,
Like, so that this is kind of an argument I got on recently with Facebook
oh yeah,
with AI art, and I made the analogy that humans need art to make art,
Mhm.
Mhm.
and AI needs art to make art. And of course, everybody is yelling at me because they're like, "It's not the same.
Right,
It's
right.
different how we use it." I mean, yes, I know that, and I know that there's not like a computer brain that's like looking at art the same way we are. It's making
Right.
these combinations. But the point that I was trying to make is there actually wasn't a point. It was just like, hey, isn't this a kind of a neat similarity that I bet you guys haven't thought of? And everyone was like, you love AI. Why do you love
Yeah,
AI? It's killing us.
traitor.
Because
I saw that
Facebook,
thread.
right? And
Yeah. Well, you
and
didn't just do one thread, you did 3. I think
oh, I
that
had to triple
you're all
down. Yeah.
everyone's enraged, and the next day you're like, "Part 2." I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, this guy's about to, like, burn the house down."
But my message to artists was, and I really hope that most of them could understand that I'm saying, like, that technology is there, and you could spend your life's work trying to kill it.
Mhm.
Right.
I haven't seen technology get put back in a box ever, right?
Mhm.
Right, right.
And so it can be regulated and managed. Sure, I'm for that. I'm not
Mhm.
against that, but I don't think you as an artist should waste your time trying to like lead this crusade against AI. And
Yeah.
I was going to make a YouTube video. I've got like notes here of
Mhm.
like all the technologies. Like if you just take your phone of all the companies that have been put out of business. Now these are people with real jobs, real businesses, real lives, just
Mhm.
like us artists, right?
Yeah.
With
Mhm.
real jobs, wives, bills, and all. I mean, the camera companies. Where's
Right.
Kodak
Right,
today?
Yeah.
Because you
right.
got your iPhone, right? TVs, books. We do books on our games, calculators.
Physical
You don't
media
buy a
of any
calculator.
kind.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you don't buy a calculator anymore. You don't buy a GPS. Remember, Garmin was a big company. Where are they now? You
Right.
know, music, alarm clocks. We used to buy alarm clocks. The remote to
Yeah.
your TV, a pager, a watch, a flashlight. I mean, like disruptive technologies are always going to come. And
Yeah.
how are we going to thrive as artists through these
Yeah.
disruptions and find, like you said, Jake, find the opportunities?
Well,
Well,
and the
what's
opportunity might not be directly related to your creative pursuit. So, like my opportunity that came during the 2008 through 2011 like financial crisis
Mhm.
was we were we had we had been renting and renting and renting, and we had money saved up, and we were able to buy a house for dirt cheap, right?
Mhm.
That had nothing to do with my art. That had nothing to do with, everybody's losing their heads because, people had bought houses that were worth nothing, and people had done this and that. But what that was able for me to do was to get in a house, because I had this family, get into a house at a price, like a mortgage payment that I could afford with
Yep.
the freelance art career that I had.
Yeah.
And that was like, that was like a godsend for me. You know,
Yeah.
it kind of laid some financial groundwork for us so that I could not have to worry about housing my family, and I
Right.
could
Right.
focus on the art. So, you know, and people are going to say, well, AI is different, you know,
Right.
and maybe it is different, but there's still opportunity there. Like there's so many ways that you can leverage this technology. And I don't mean like you know, straight up become a mid-journey like monkey,
Right.
but
Right.
there's ways to leverage it to further your ability. Like we're talking SVS, we've had 200 episodes, 200 plus episodes of this podcast.
Yeah.
And we have Lily Howell, who's our show notes person. And she's gone through and she's done show notes for all these, but um, we were just talking about how do we archive or how do we organize all of this um, so that you can easily find a question that we answered, right?
Right.
Because right now, if you know, if there's a question that somebody asked and we answered it, good luck finding it. You know, it's
Right.
Right.
buried in
Right.
an episode, in episode 160, it's buried in there. How would you ever find it, right?
Right.
So part of that is like copy and paste all of this, all of these transcripts from our videos, put them into ChatGPT and tell it to like divide it up into what's a question, what's filler talk,
Mm.
and then she can organize that in a way that is something that's
Right.
useful to us, right? And so that's like something that would normally have taken her a billion hours to do is like cut it down
Right.
into a
Right.
lot less time, right?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, I mean, I'm getting a little historical here, but there's a movie about Morgan. I think his name's Morgan. It's not too old. It's about a painter, and then the camera comes out. You know where they have to put the thing over. It's like poof. You
Yeah.
know? So he's like looking at it with suspicion. He's this old man, and then he sits there, and he realizes it mirrors when he has a model, you know, about to, you know, he's going to paint this model, this life drawing, whatever
Yeah.
you call it. I never went to college. So, you know, he's sitting there and they're positioning him just the same way as that would happen. And then the guy puts the thing over and then it goes poof. And then the guy taking the photograph says, "It's finished." And then he says, "So am I." And he really thinks this is the end.
Yeah.
This is over, right?
Yeah.
And you know, you look at something like the printing press when it came out, everyone's like, no, everyone has books, everyone will read. And that's not
Right.
what happened. And then when the was it the Nook, the digital interface ebook type thing,
Yeah.
they thought that
E-readers.
older people were going to hate this, the younger people were going to love it, but the reverse happened. It's the
Right.
older people like it, younger people like hardback books. So
Yeah.
it's hard to predict technology.
Right.
And you know, you probably know this more about this, Jake, is about the Disney illustrators that really threw a fit when the Pixar guys were there,
Mhm.
like before they were Pixar. You know, I think that's the reason they got booted out, right? Because they were
Mhm.
all claiming to walk out on them. And you asked me like, did I start digital? No, when I first got to SVS, I was very bigoted towards it because I thought digital meant easy. That's what I thought. And then
Right.
you do it and you realize, oh no, that this does not make anything easier. It just means you don't have to buy paper. That's all.
Mhm.
But the
Mhm.
stigma in your head, you know, we have in our heads of things, it's just like, I try not to waste my time on like overthinking. Well, Simona will laugh at that, but
Yeah.
but I try not to. Well, and she'll laugh at this whole thing because I was a big complainer of AI in the beginning. I'm like, we're done. She's like,
Mhm.
she's had the same will to it. She's like, don't worry about it. Like I'm like, I'm gonna worry all night, you know.
Right.
So, but I'm a convert.
Too busy making art to worry about
Yeah,
that. And I want to kind of, you know, I finished that thought out because I realized me being able to get a house for cheap is not the same as a show notes person being able to do more work because of AI. Like
oh yeah,
those aren't equal on the like the scale of opportunity. But I
right.
want to say like COVID, right?
Mhm.
The opportunity that may have opened up for people was realizing you don't have to be tied to a particular city like you. Like
Right.
you don't have to live in this city with this commute and with this particular job, but perhaps you could move to a different place that's way better
Yeah.
for your mental health, way better for your family life, way more affordable. And so that sort of disruption there led to that sort of opportunity. I don't know what the opportunity is going to be with AI. It could, and you know, it's really, I mean, I hate calling it AI because that's not the most
Right.
accurate term for it. It's
Right.
artificial, it's machine learning, but it's also industrialized art is really what we're dealing with here. Making art on an industrial scale level, but that's something that has been happening for the last 20 or 30 years
Yeah.
already.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily, it's just it's sped up the process. But I think what you're going to see is people wanting something more authentic, more
Yeah.
traditional, more real.
Yeah.
That could open up a whole nother opportunity as
Yeah.
well.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know how controversial this is to say, but I know professional artists out there that are already using AI. I mean, they're not having it make the image, but they're already figuring out how can I incorporate this into my work.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And they're saying like, yeah, it's cool. And my concern is people who are gonna wait and they're gonna try and figure out like, is this gonna become illegal or something? I don't know what they're thinking, but um, really good artists are gonna figure out how to use it really well.
And they're
Right.
gonna there will be some that will make amazing work. They will use the AI programs
Hmm.
to help them in one capacity or another.
Right.
In my contention is the end user will never know about it.
Right.
They're gonna
Yeah.
fall in love with an IP,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and they're gonna say, "This is my favorite book to read to my kids,"
Right.
and
Yeah.
they're never gonna know that AI was used in part of it or a lot of it or how much. But you're right. They're spending all their time worrying about hating on it
Well,
rather than
let me
just
give you
accepting the fact that there's a change coming.
let me give you a specific example, and I actually want the people listening to this, if you're able to go on YouTube and tell me what you think of this. And that is like, is this inappropriate usage, or is this totally fair, right? Prior to AI, what would happen is an art director would be tasked with coming up with a visual language, a visual style for this particular, we'll say commercial work, right? I've worked on a
Mhm.
bunch of commercials in the art department.
Mhm.
The client wants them to make a commercial of like a robot dog, to advertise their product. So what the art director will do is scour the internet, Pinterest, Flickr, Google Images, and start pulling artist websites, Twitter. I even know of art directors who have Twitter set up in a way with, I think, Zapier and other third party programs, where if there's a certain art that's posted under a certain hashtag like Portfolio Day, it will automatically save all the art posted on Portfolio Day and put it in a folder. So they can just go to that folder and look through all
Oh.
the cool art, right?
Mm.
And so what these art directors will do is they'll make a mood board. And a mood board is where you put, these are the colors that we're liking. This is this style that we're liking. This is the different. So they'll have 20 pictures of robots that artists have posted online and they've designed.
Mm.
They'll have 20 pictures of really cool paintings with the color style that they want that artists have painted and put online. Okay. None of it's been paid for. They haven't paid these artists. These artists posted their work freely. And now the art director is using that art as their style guide.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah. Interesting.
So then the art director is going to go find an artist on their art team or hire a freelancer, show them that mood board, which here's where I come into the picture. Here's our mood board, Jake. We want it to look something like this. And every once in a while, like my art will actually be on that mood board. And they're good enough to like contact me and say like, hey, why not go to the artist that made some of this, right? And so then I'll look at that mood board and then I'll start making stuff that directly fits the project. Okay.
Right.
What has happened with AI is their art director will skip scraping the internet, stealing people's art to make their mood board, and they'll just punch into AI, or they'll hire somebody who's really good at messing with Midjourney or Stable Diffusion or whatever,
Right.
and say, "Here's the mood that we're going for. Spit me out 40 images." And so
Right.
now those 40 images are on that mood board, and then
Yeah.
that mood board will go to because AI cannot make production ready work. It's just
Mm,
not there. And the artists, the people using AI don't know how to get it to do very specific art direction changes, right?
right.
So
Hmm.
then it
Right.
goes to an artist. And I've been one of these artists where the mood boards are getting are all AI art. And they're saying, here's as far as we could get with AI art. Now make something that we can actually use. And
Right.
so my question is, what's the difference between stealing artists directly or using AI to steal the art to make the
Right.
mood
No,
boards?
I mean that's what I do anyways. I mean, in the sense of creating a mood board. I mean, it's like I went from not buying another artist's art and just making it myself by using their work
Right.
on a mood board. I just don't believe like there's more to painting and illustrating than the actual skill. There's what you can see. I
Hmm.
mean, I went through about a 2-month period where I was like, well, I'm bad at art now. And I do this like I know this, I know how it works. I know
Mhm.
how my brain works. But every time I'm still surprised at how I just convince myself, well, I'm not good anymore. And then I go look at my portfolio and I go, oh, I was never good. And I'm like, wait a second. I've gotten better. I just don't realize it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
all these years of my eyes and my brain catching up, um, if someone just comes into that green and they just type in something, they're like, yeah, that looks good. There's gonna be something they're missing. I mean,
Hmm.
just color alone.
Hmm.
Um, I can't imagine it being that simple. But I mean, it's such a weird conversation. It gets so ethereal and weird, right? It's
Yeah.
like,
Well,
what
and
if you found out an artist was tracing? You know what I mean? Like,
let me throw this out there. The Facebook response to what you guys said, especially you, Jake, would be, why are you supporting AI?
mm.
Why are you for this?
Oh
You didn't.
no, I think there has to be, like, I live in reality, and reality is you kind of have to deal with what actually is happening,
Sounds like
Right.
you're
right?
supporting it.
No,
I'm being Facebook right now.
right, yeah, I know. So what I would say to that is, yes, original I has an original sin, right? That everything that has been trained on essentially has been stolen.
Yeah.
And if you were to, and they've done the math on this, if you were to be able to license all the images that, or all the books that were inputted into AI, all the images that were inputted into AI, it would be so prohibitively expensive as to never have this. The technology would never have a chance to be as good as it could be. And
Mhm.
the argument there would be like, great, who needs it? Why do we need it in the first place, right?
Right.
um, and the flip side of that is, um, it is able to do things that, um, that humans just aren't able to do in a way that, um, is more efficient and more deliberate than what humans could do. And I'm not talking about creatively, I'm talking like medically, right? Like, you can train AI to like solve medical problems. You can
Right.
train AI to solve engineering problems that humans
Yeah.
could
Yeah.
never quite figure out, right? You can train AI to solve creative problems also that
Yeah.
maybe not might not be able to be solved. So
The fear is that it's can be used for good and for bad, obviously, right?
yeah. So where I come down is like, I, it really is. It's a big gray area. Some people see it as black and white, but I kind of see the world, all the world is like gray.
I
There's
do
just
too.
Right.
different shades of it,
Right.
and and I think if we figure out a way to regulate it, we
Right.
figure out a way to like, um, compensate somebody somehow. I don't know if that's even possible.
Right.
Um, uh, but then you also figure out a way to use it in a way that furthers humanity and helps humanity instead of
Right.
eliminates, people's opportunities.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at we're on a podcast right now, video. I mean, do you think someone like Bill Watterson would have done this? I mean, he would have been like, if someone came up to him and said, "Soon there's going to be a camera in your office looking at you, where you're going to talk," he'd be like, "Oh, I'm going to go work a coal
No
mine."
way.
Like that's what he probably would have done. I mean, he's just like,
Well,
and
I know when he was in the
we've
thick of Calvin
adapted.
and Hobbes, he essentially that I've got to time my walks in this month because that's, I've got to schedule in my walks and my sleep. And I read an interview, the 10 years that he did Calvin and Hobbes, which was just 10 years, it was grind and go for 10 years. And that's why he quit.
Oh
Because
yeah,
he's like, I can't keep this up. I can't do this.
Mm.
yeah.
And
No,
I would
yeah,
have
no, no.
preferred half as much or a third as much Calvin and Hobbes that went for 30 years than the amount of Calvin Hobbes that we got in 10 years. I don't know.
Yeah, no, and it's like we can. I mean, just looking back on artists that I really like, I
Yeah.
go, oh, if I only I could, like Roald Dahl, let's say. I mean,
Yeah.
he has his little hut and he just writes, and then he just does all the, like I'm a writer. He doesn't do anything else,
Yeah.
and you just go, oh man, what a great time. But you don't realize how much stuff we developed that we're just used to.
Yeah.
I don't know. Everyone freaks out, and it'll be okay. I think.
I hope
I
so.
don't know.
I hope
Yeah,
so.
it will, Jake.
If
Yeah.
it's not okay,
Yeah, it
then it
will.
won't be okay.
You need a therapy beard. This will help
Yeah.
you get through
Well,
the tough
I
times.
haven't shaved since Saturday, and that's
I
about as long
shaved
as I usually go.
I shaved what little I had off.
I'll
So
donate some, and then you guys can glue it, and then
Yeah.
we'll
Well,
get through this. Yeah.
we will. We need to. You have a critique group, then we'll start an art therapy group.
Yeah. Well,
Essentially.
it's kind of already that.
you know what'll be fun is to look at this podcast in 5 or 10 years about the AI issues and see where we're
Yeah.
at.
Yeah, I would love to do a review or like I don't know what it's called, where you go back and go over what you said. There's a
Mhm.
certain word for that. Anyways, I'd love to do that and be like, here's where I was wrong. Here's where I was right. Here's the
Mhm.
10 areas I was wrong. Here's the one area I was right.
Yeah, those are always kind of fun to do. I don't
Yeah.
know. I could go back on your guys' videos to see if you like Will Terry's older videos and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Just if I'm like, and I'll be like, oh yeah, he was totally wrong. No.
A lot. You know what's funny is, and I told Jake and Lee this, I have a Google Doc of predictions that I made, and they're not even predictions.
I
They're
remember
sometimes
that.
they're like things where I'm
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
right about, and then down the road I find out that I was completely wrong.
Mhm.
And I think, and I got that actually from Scott Adams, the Dilbert guy, who said you really
Oh, yeah.
really should keep track of your win-loss record on your predictions, because most people love to ignore when we're wrong, right?
Right.
We like to tend to think that we're right about stuff all the
Oh
time.
yeah.
What percentage
but
are
if you
you
actually
right, Will?
What's that?
What percentage are you right?
I'm usually wrong. Which
Wow.
I think everybody. I'd
we're
say
bad
probably
predictors,
everybody.
and usually where I'm wrong is I'm too early. Like with Lee, I get into bets with Lee, and I usually am right,
Yeah, by
but
the end of the year.
but I'm early on when it will happen.
Yeah.
And so I got to learn
yeah.
to add to build in some time on those predictions, and then
you kind of start
like
winning.
one was the number of bank failures this
Mhm.
year, in 1
Oh.
year period.
Yeah.
And I was off by a couple of bank failures, and we had one this last week. So I'm like one shy of winning that bet with him, but I already lost it because of my timing.
See, you guys have a weird critique group.
We do.
Oh man.
We all have these
Well,
weird.
Here's the maybe we'll end on this, since this has gone on. This has been a great conversation. I was just going to say, one usage for AI that's really benefited my life is when Lee and Will get in a text battle and somehow I'm still in the thread. I just copy and paste that into ChatGPT, and I was like, can you just simplify this? Like, tell me who's winning. And ChatGPT will say, here's what Will Terry's point of view is. Here's what Lee's point of view is.
Well,
like
you said, it's good to surround yourself with people who don't necessarily agree.
Oh yeah.
That's a big problem with our media, is people tend to subscribe to the media that feeds them and just massages their shoulders. They're like in their theories and their ideas and stuff. And what you really need, that's one reason why I listen to Scott Adams, is I disagree with him like 30% of the time.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's a healthy amount of pushback where I'm like, I really don't like what you're saying right now, and I really think you're wrong.
Right.
But it is another way to think of it.
Yeah, no, you have to be made uncomfortable. And
Yeah.
yeah, definitely, I guess that's the cap, right? Is that the critique group is that for me all through our whole worldviews and everything is so different. And going in there, maintaining your like existence in there,
Yeah,
you have to have an honest opinion about yourself. It's just impossible not to.
that's awesome.
That's great.
Yeah,
That's really good. Well, Eric, thank you for joining
yeah,
us. It was
yeah. Thanks for
awesome.
having me on.
All right, that was Eric Castleman. Great interview. So good
Yeah.
to like sit and chat with him. He's such a good conversationalist. I really enjoyed
Easy
that.
going.
Yeah. Yeah. At
I
one
think.
point, I forgot we were podcasting, and I was just like, "Oh, we're hanging out and we're talking."
Uh-huh.
Anyways, this episode of 3 Point Perspective is made possible by SVSLearn, where becoming a great illustrator starts. Your hosts are Will Terry, Lee White, Jake Parker. Again, Lee White's on assignment, couldn't join us today, but he will be with us next week. Our podcast is produced by Daniel Tu. That's Daniel TU. Special thanks to our keeper of the curriculum, Austin Shirtliff, our show notes wrangler, Lily Howell, our chief operations officer, Lisa Fott, and our in-house illustrator, Annalise Black. Now, go draw something.